Once again, hi everybody. My name is Tricia Shimamura, and I'm the Director of Community Affairs for the Manhattan Borough President's Office. Happy Thursday. I'm so glad to see so many of you guys with us. Thank you to, I see a few board members who I've seen earlier this week at other trainings. So it's really nice to see your dedication to this series. A little bit of background. In the charter, it says that the borough presidents are responsible for providing technical support and assistance to community boards, and we take this responsibility very seriously. When we were thinking about how we might do this, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just a one-off kind of training of sorts, but we really wanted to create a thoughtful series of opportunities to provide and connect you with leaders in different industries, with people who are doing good things, so that you might be able to gather some really good takeaways in terms of civic engagement skills, leadership skills, technical skills, and that could ultimately be a benefit to your community. We also wanted to open it up beyond community boards to CECs, to neighborhood associations, to BIDs, to block associations, really anybody who serves their community in any way, and make sure that we were creating a program that really would speak to all of you. And that's how we came with the second year in a row, the leadership training series. It's been a good week, a long week, and forgive me, my voice is just about gone. But we've talked about all different aspects of civic engagement. And today's is one of my favorite, don't tell the other sessions but we're going to be talking about open data. Really and truly, this is designed with this idea that the more tools that you have available to get good information about your neighborhoods and about your communities, the better off you are in your advocacy, in your policy making, in your direction of resources and services and all of those things. So from creating a district needs statement, to doing a needs assessment, to passing resolutions on things that you want to advocate for. If you run a nonprofit organization, and you need to know where the needs are, all of these things can be affected by the data that you have. And that's why I'm so grateful that BetaNYC is here to really talk to you about what information we actually have available to us right now, and how specific it can be. Before I go any further, I just want to say a huge thank you to Porfirio Figueroa, Eric Cuello, and Don Billings from our team, as well as the rest of the community affairs unit. They really are the ones who have put together all of these wonderful conversations, and we've had a lot of them over the last week. I also want to do a quick plug. Tonight, we're going to be doing a land use and zoning training, which is always so important. Honestly, I would be hard pressed to find a more critical topic that community boards face in terms of where they can make an impact. So I hope that you would be joining us tonight at 5:30 for that conversation. And then I really do want to make a plug. Tomorrow is one of two in-person trainings that we're doing in this series for the first time. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we are going to be with the New York State Office of Emergency Management at John Jay College. So again, 12 o'clock tomorrow, John Jay, for an emergency preparedness training. This is a great training. It's an hour long. What's also so special about it, not only are you going to learn a little bit about how to be prepared while facing natural disasters, which we know come more frequently than ever nowadays, but also as a giveaway, as long as you RSVP, you're going to be able to receive a Go backpack full of, excuse me, emergency preparedness tools, including a first aid kit, flashlight, all these other good things. So we hope that you would join us tomorrow. It would be lovely to see all of you in person. It would be great to be able to come together on the grounds of education and emergency preparedness. And I hope that you guys would join us there. I also want to say that on Monday, November 20th, we're going to be doing an overdose prevention training, which is also just so important. And that's going to be with DOHMH, the Department of Health for the New York City. It's going to be held in our office. You can also do it online, but I will plug doing this in person because If you're in person, then you will also be able to receive doses of Narcan after we learn how to use them properly. That should be included in any well-stocked first aid kit. So I know for me personally, I'm going to go to Friday's training. I'm going to get my go bag. I'm going to get my full of first aid kit, flashlight, all these other good things. And then I'm going to go to the the overdose prevention training on Monday, where I'm going to get doses of Narcan that I can keep in my first aid kit, because nowadays it's just very important to make sure that we are all well prepared for both an emergency situation as well, all sorts of emergency situations, both natural disaster and unfortunately overdose related. So I hope that you would consider joining us for those two trainings. For now, I'm going to turn it over to the very capable hands of Porfirio and Eric to introduce BetaNYC. I'm so excited again for this training, and we'll just encourage you, as you have questions, to go ahead and put them in the Q&A function right at the bottom of your screen. So if you look at the bottom bar, you should see a Q&A button. Best to put your questions in there, they'll get answered. Finally, I just want to say, just before I pass it over, that you may see on the top left-hand corner a little button that says recording. And I just want to say that all of our trainings this week have been recorded. We're excited about that, and we'll be looking to put them on our YouTube page after the fact, after this week is over. So so I hope that you can stay here for the entire presentation. It's going to be great. I promise we'll get you out of here by 1 o'clock. But if you've missed one, if something pulls you away at the last minute, don't worry. Go to our YouTube page after this week. We'll have all these trainings up online, and then you can still get the information that way. Thank you again to everybody who's here, and looking forward to hearing more from Beta. Porfirio, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Tricia. So I have the great pleasure of introducing both Kate Nicholson and Ashley Louis. Kate Nicholson is the Director of Programs and Partnerships at BetaNYC. Kate is the Director of the Programs and Partnerships, where she spearheads collaborative efforts with New York City agencies and organizations to bridge data literacy gaps. She holds an MFA in Design for Social Innovation from the School of Visual Arts and a BA in Economics from Tufts University. Ashley Louis is the Chief Technology Officer for BetaNYC, and Ashley is a designer and civic technologist who works at the intersection of data visualization, geospatial analysis, and interactive storytelling. She holds a Master of Science in Architecture and Urban Design from Columbia University, where she was awarded the GSAPP Visualization Award and contributed to data visualization research through the Center for Spatial Research. We are thrilled to have you both, and I will turn it over to you, Kate.
Thank you both. It's a pleasure to be here today and to tell you all about open data. Ashley and I are going to take you through a few different things to get you acquainted with open data. So we're going to spend a little bit of time just quickly introducing who we are and what we do at BetaNYC, and then go over open data in a sort of introductory way. We'll share a little bit of history and just go over like the definition of it. Then I'm going to show you how to use open data, New York City open data in particular. We will go over to the open data site and navigate how to find a data set and filter it and potentially do a little analyzing with it. And then I'm going to show you some tools that use open data that you can harness in your day-to-day work or community board operations or organizing. And then I'm going to hand it over to Ashley, who will show you how she might go about taking data from the website and using it in a more hands-on approach. Then we'll have time for Q&A, and we'll share some resources that you can use beyond this class. Please, if there's any questions, just put them in the chat. We're eager to hear from you. If you can introduce yourself in the chat, we'd love to know where you're coming from, if there's open data that you're specifically interested, and also just what your skill level is, if you've ever heard of open data or if this is the first time. So we're BetaNYC. Before I get into the class, we want you to know that we are a resource for you. We're a nonprofit organization, and We are a civic technology nonprofit. We're a team of New Yorkers. We're 5 full-time staff, 3 apprentices, 3 associates, and twice a year we have 4 to 8 college students join us as Civic Innovation Fellows. Our mission is to make it easier for all New Yorkers to access information and use open data and technology in New York City to improve their communities, hold decision makers accountable, legislate. We want government to work for the people, by the people in this digital era. We have a long history. Oh, you cannot see slides. I was sharing my screen. I am very sorry. All right, I'm just going to go.
We can
You
see
can see
them.
them now. Okay, so this was our agenda, just for a quick. We're BetaNYC. This is our mission. And I was just telling you that we started as a meetup of civic hackers in 2009, interested in making democracy function better. And one of the tools that we were using, or we were hoping to use, was open data, public data that the government has that they can make available to people. Much of our work started around supporting community boards specifically in using data and technology in their operations. And we still do today in just sort of day-to-day helping boards transition to virtual and hybrid meetings. We've helped the Borough President's Office with appointment process in demographics, data analysis, and various other ways. So today, we work in partnership with New Yorkers and local government to support how they access information and use technology in 3 different ways. We're building a civic technology talent pipeline where we run a fellowship program for CUNY students to gain skills in open data, analytics, and civics. We have a lab that is a great resource for you if you're on a community board or at a nonprofit. Our lab runs a help desk called Radar, which responds to community and New York City offices who have needs that are around data and technology. So we'll help you do reports, build tools, and just sort of problem solve with you using data and technology. That ends up being a lot of, results in a lot of meaningful projects that can be duplicated and carried on throughout. And then the last thing that we do is we run a lot of public data literacy programs for the public. Every year we run a festival called Open Data Week, and we also run a program called the Open Data Ambassadors, where we train New Yorkers to teach classes about open data so that more people can learn about this powerful resource. All right, so like I said, we're very interested in knowing who you are. I think that the chat is enabled, so if you could just tell us who you are and why you're here, we'd love to know. And without further ado, let's get into it. Today, we're here to learn how to use open data. So the first thing I want to do, and if you're in the chat, please respond. Do you know what the definition is of open data? Open data is public data that's generated by New York City agencies and city organizations available for public use. So I'm talking specifically about New York City open data. Lots of governments produce open data, and open data can be just any data that's available to the public. There's specific characteristics about open data. It has to be made available and accessible to people, and it has to be able to be participated in universally, and it has to be able to be reused and redistributed. There's a few other characteristics that we won't go into today, but things like it has to be, I won't go further into it, but that's fine. Today, New York City open data is all around us. There's public data available about nearly every facet of city life. So here in this photograph, you might recognize it as being in Union Square. You can see how our physical environment kind of maps to specific open data sets. So for every paved street, recycling bin, parking ticket, or I think there's some restaurant inspections data that's being highlighted in the back, there's a data point available. So I guess you can kind of think of open data as this resource that is sort of part of our day-to-day life. If you check the weather, a lot of weather apps use open data. That's data from the National Weather Service. So a lot of GPS apps use data that is that is open data from like OpenStreetMaps or from traffic data. A lot of people also use open data in different ways. So you might have heard of people using open data to look at 311 complaints, for instance. We're going to get into that a little bit today. Some people use open data to do business research. Some people use it to fact check and hold government accountable. A lot of people use it to track issues in their communities, looking at trends of complaints or when something was last fixed, like a piece of street furniture. Some people use it to monitor public health issues. You might be familiar with the COVID wastewater surveillance data that was used to track COVID in sewage systems. And people, policymakers use it a lot to draft policy. So if they're trying to make a decision, they might look at about the timeline of policy that they want to create. They might look at past trends. We also see a lot of journalists using it who want to create stories or provide evidence to back up their stories. So there's a lot of use cases, and that's something that we're, constantly trying to learn more about. How are people using open data? So open data is this powerful resource. Hold on, I'm just trying to make sure I see the chat if there's any questions. It's this powerful resource, and there's a long history of how we got to where we are today. Because of its connection to data, the concept of open data is often thought of as like a 21st century phenomenon, one that accompanies the growing importance of data in our everyday lives and the increased creation and use of it by governments, both in New York and around the world. There's a long history of public efforts to make government more accountable and transparent. So to better understand how we got to this place where we have all this data on one place on the internet, we'll briefly touch on some developments that led to the creation of New York City Open Data. It's helpful context just so you can understand why it exists and how you can access it. So the roots of the open data movement, especially in New York City, can be traced back to good government efforts that date back to at least the 1800s and the progressive era of government reform. In New York City, these progressive reforms took the form of a new publication to share city notices and updates in the city record. So this is a place where everything was sort of documented and published, and information was available. And this was a revolutionary concept. We could see what was happening in government in one place in this publication. Then a few decades later, there's a lot of talk about how do we make it even more available and more accessible. And there was something called the Freedom of Information legislation, which you might know as FOIA or FOIL, Freedom of Information Act, Freedom of Information Law. And these were passed at the federal level and also by state governments. And what FOIL did was it made government information available upon request. So if you knew what you were looking for and that information existed and it could be shared, it wasn't like a sensitive data set or something, it would be shared with you. In some cases, the now public records are shared more widely. They're published in articles, but often the only person to ever see the records is the requester. So it was, it was a leap in going from, data's behind closed doors to you can request it. But there's still really just like a big barrier with, you have to know what you want and if it exists, and then wait and whatnot. So with FOIL, most government information is available if someone asks for it. And at the time, this was a revolutionary concept. In this picture, you can see that this is a memo on an FBI investigation into Martin Luther King Jr. that somebody accessed by foiling it. And people still FOIL data or information today, if they don't see it in a place that maybe it's supposed to be, or maybe it's not published for a certain reason. This is still a route to get information. Just checking. Okay. So then several decades later in New York City, we released the Public Data Directory. And this was essentially a directory of all the information that was made available through FOIL, information stored. This made a subset of the information available through FOIL more accessible by providing a listing of what data agencies have. So it was kind of like, hey, here's the menu of data that you can request. It's not necessarily all of it, but it's a big portion of what you might want to request from these different agencies. So this is in contrast with a FOIL request, where the person making the request generally needs to know in advance what they're looking for. With this directory, someone can now say, oh, okay, this agency has this data set, I'm going to request it. And interestingly, some of the systems and databases outlined in this directory actually still exist today. So then fast forward a few decades later, we're in 2012, and advocates, city staff, and elected officials came together for a number of years to advocate and get the open data law passed. And something that's unique about the open data law here in New York City is that while many cities have open data as a policy or an executive order, New York City's law guarantees that the public will have access to this information in perpetuity, so regardless of administration. And the big difference, the big changing thing that happened was that with this law, it said all public data needs to be made available in one place on the internet. So it's way better than FOIL for making sure that data and transparency about data is accessible. And it no longer was the case that people had to just ask for information. It's made public by default and shared with everyone by default on one page. So today, New York City open data can be accessed at newyorknyc.gov/open data. As of last year, it contained more than 3,000 data sets, billions of rows of data, and it's managed by the New York City Open Data Team, which is housed at the New York City Office of Technology and Innovation. And this wealth of information is made possible thanks to a network of about 100 open data coordinators that are spread throughout city government. So every city agency, office, or commission, including elected officials, has an open data coordinator. And these open data coordinators are well versed in their data, in their agency's data. And they're responsible for working with New York City Open Data Team to identify, structure, document, publish, update, and share that agency's open data sets. So I'm going to pause really quick. Are there any questions? Or we can get to them at the end, I guess Porfirio said. So I want to show you open data. So if you would like, you can follow along. It might be a little fast, but all these slides, we have like a series of screenshots that we'll share in class materials. So don't worry, but I'm going to try to walk you through the open data set. And my goal here is to show you how to use this website, which is powered by a software called Socrata. And basically, I'll show you how to find a data set, read a data set, filter it, group it, and visualize it. So these are all some basic functions that you can do with a data set. So, okay. So the first thing I do is I go to, everyone can see my screen all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Great. Okay, so I type in New York City Open Data into my browser, and I'm taken to this website. And on this website, we can enter search terms for a data set. Like you could enter NYPD, you could enter noise, you could enter 311, trees. And for the purposes of today, I'm going to show you how to use this site through, we're going to take a look at 311 data. we're on this page. If you want to look at data if you want to browse the data, you can go to this data tab, and there's a few different ways you can browse it. So you can look at new data sets, popular data sets. You can scroll down and you can check out data sets by category. We tend to not like to recommend viewing by category because it still results in a lot of data. So unless you really know what you're looking for, it's not the best way. One way that I like to search for data is through this view, which is by agency. So if you have a sense of like 311 data, or the DOT publishes data about when a street is being repaved, I might want to look over at the DOT. So is everyone familiar with 311? Let's take a look at it and see what we can do with it. So I think many of you probably know that 311 is a New York City government resource for assistance and general information outside of emergency situations. And all 311 requests are public data. They're recorded in a data set. Now, if you've ever made a 311 request or a complaint, many New Yorkers make them every day, your request goes into a data set that is updated on a regular basis. So I typed in 311 and I get these results. There's a whole list of them. So sometimes it's like, I'm not sure which one to look for or to find. And there's a few different things we can look at on this page to make sure we're looking at the right data set. The first is to read the title. The second is to look over at this icon right here, and you see it says data set. If you scroll down, there might be some other things you see, like filtered view. Sometimes there's a data lens. I'm looking for a data set, so I know that this is close to what I want. Another way to look at, to make sure that this is a data set that I want to look at, is to look at the date that it was last updated. And so I'm seeing that this was last updated yesterday. And I'm pretty confident that this is the data set that I want. All right, so let's click it and see. We are now at a page that we call the primer page. And this page, if we're not in the data set yet, we are just on the page that's telling us about the data set. So when you first visit any data set on the Open Data portal, you'll see this page. And this page gives you beneficial information about the data, which is called metadata. Metadata is just a term that means data about data. So, if New York City has a data set of trees where every row in the data set is a different tree, but if I want data about this data set, like what agency it's from, or when it was last updated, that's all metadata. So there's a few things that I'm going to point out. And the way that I like to read this, and we encourage people to read it, is by asking a series of questions. So the first one is this the data I'm looking for? So I'm going to read the title, 311 service requests from 2010 to present. So that sounds good. I think I saw in that list there was a data set that had the title before 2010. So that wouldn't have been the data set I wanted. The next thing is I'm going to click this more and see if there's some descriptive information I can read. And this is what I'm reading. So this data set is all 311 service requests from 2010 to present, and it's updated daily. Great. So I think this is the data set that I'm looking for. So I'm going to also ask, is this data sufficiently current? So the updated date information, where did that go? So this was last updated, like I said, November 15th, 2023. So this shows us that this is probably the data set I'm looking for. The next question I'm going to ask myself is, do I understand this data set well enough to start using it? Every data set, it contains a lot of information. And sometimes if you just dive right into the data set, it's a little overwhelming. There's a lot of columns, things that like you just will be like, I don't need that. That's noise. I just want to look at this column. So I find it very helpful to use a resource that they provide on this page called the Data Dictionary. So you find the Data Dictionary down here in attachments. And I'm pointing this out because I remember one of the first times that I went to this page, I thought that this was the data set itself because it's an Excel file. But it's an Excel file that tells you data about, tells you the metadata of the data set. So I'm going to open it up. Let me just see if I can reshare. All right. And if there's any questions, Ashley, let me know and I will answer them. And I'm aware of time. We got to get through some of this. Okay, so cool. All right. So can everyone see this?
Yes.
This data dictionary? Great. So this data dictionary shows a few different things. You'll see up here, there's different tabs. I can see some of the main the basic information about the data dictionary, like the data set description, the frequency of publishing, what each row is. So every data set contains rows, which are records. Each row is a service request. That's what I'm looking for. So great. You can also see, and this is really helpful, what the columns are in the data set. So each 311 service request, when it's filed, there's all this different information, this metadata that goes with it. So there's the agency that's responsible for responding to it. There's a complaint type. Every complaint is categorized. There's a description of that complaint type, a descriptor. And something that's really useful to note is the formats that are being reported in, because when you do analysis, you might need to know the format. So like the created date, what is the format? The format here is MMDDYY, and that is, this is the format that we want you to put the data in. So this is a great resource just to look in if you are like, what are all the different values as well? So like in this data set, I can begin to see, like, if I'm a community board member and I'm interested in understanding what are the things that you can complain about or do service requests on, and what might I want to analyze or look at for trends in my community, I might take a look at this and be like, oh, like I might want to know about all the zoning violations by department that are being fielded to the Department of Buildings. And then I might actually search for these zoning violations and start to like understand which ones are the most. All right, so this is the data dictionary. And it gives you a description of the column sets, the columns, like I said, and the key things are that you should get an understanding of what is in this data set, the column names, what are the expected values, and just start to be familiar with what the terms are that you can use to search for, or how values are written. So I am going to now share my screen back to my this one. Okay, so I've now asked myself, is this the data I'm looking for? Is the data sufficiently current? Do I understand this data set well enough to start using it? And this last question I'm going to ask is, did I pass it? Oh yes, I want to know how many records are in this data set. Is it too large for me to use as is? A lot of computers and computer programs can't open really large data sets. So if I'm looking to take this data and like put it directly onto my computer, I might want to know first how many records are in this. And as you can see, 311 is a really large database. There's over 34 million requests or records in this data set. So my first reaction is, okay, we got to filter this down and make it smaller. So it's easy to do that on open data, and now we'll show you how. So the first thing, now that we have a sense of this data set's context, let's take a look at the data itself. So I'm going to go up here to view data. And this is going to show you what the data looks like. So you have rows here. Each service request has a unique key, so each one is able to be identified as unique. And we have columns up here. So here we have created date. And on the bottom right, you can see that we have 34 million rows here. So the first thing I'm going to do is say, this is a lot of data. I'm going to say that, like, in this scenario, we're going to take a look at noise complaints. And if we're looking at noise complaints, we don't need, to see complaints and service requests that are sent to the Department of Sanitation. So I'm going to use an operation called filtering to narrow down my search and make this data set smaller. So let's go down here. So in this view, you'll see the data set here. And then down here, you have a few different operations. The first one I'm going to show you is this little funnel icon. It's called a filter. And let's go ahead and say, for this analysis, we don't want to see data from 2010. Maybe we just want to see it for this past month. So I'm going to filter this data to be a created date when the service request was published. And I'm going to say it was, let's look for maybe the month of October. So we'll say October 1st to October 31st. And I'm going to hit apply. This is a really key step. Always hit apply. Sometimes people create filters and then they move on to the next operation and their filter doesn't transfer over. So I'm going to press apply. And you can see immediately my data set has gotten smaller. It's now down to 282,000. That's still a lot. So let's add another filter. Let's say we're doing stuff with Manhattan Borough President's Office. So let's filter by borough. Let's just look at the Borough of Manhattan. And I know, because I looked at the data dictionary, that there's a column in here called Borough. And the way that it's formatted, I already know this, is just, it says Manhattan. And something that I'm going to point out here, and this is an example, sometimes things take a while to load, so you do have to be patient. And sometimes it will just take a little bit of time, especially when we get to visualizing. So I'm going to press apply. And it's taking some time. And I think the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to look at noise. And something I've heard a little bit about is helicopter noise being an issue in some communities. So we'll see if we can find that in this data set, even though I'm pretty sure that you can't report it to 311, but it does get put into the reports to the EDC, do get put into the 311 data set. So, all right, we now have filtered for what are all the 311 complaints in October in Manhattan. And we can see that there were 63,000 311 complaints. So the last thing I'm going to do is say, I don't want to know about any of the other complaint types. I just want to check out the noise complaints and the helicopter noise. Let's say I looked at the dictionary and saw that there was a complaint type called helicopter noise. Let me just scroll down. So I'm going to start with noise. And it might take a second, so let's just let it be. All right, well, I know that it's formatted like this. So let's see what happens if I do that. I don't think that's gonna work. Noise. And if I can't do that, I do have it saved on another screen. We're running into a little bit of a roadblock, but let's see if I can. Nope. Okay, so this is a problem that and a limitation sometimes of using this website is you don't get to, it takes a while to load. All right, I'm gonna take a second. And basically what this is going to do, and I do believe I have it somewhere else. It's not gonna work. All right, let's see if we can, well, we're not gonna do that filter for now. We're going to move on to the next one. So we're gonna move on to group and we're gonna, let's see. Oh, maybe it's gonna work. Okay, it's just the two filters. So something we're going to do, so we're just looking at all the complaint types in Manhattan last month. I'm going to show you now how to group and aggregate. So, you know, filtering is great, but if you want to sort of see like a report style view of this information, you can do that by grouping it and aggregating it. So I'm going to group by community board. So there is a column in here called community board, and you can, if we group by it, I want to know how many 311 requests were made in each community board last month. So I'm going to group by community board, and then I'm going to aggregate, which means we're going to select the column that we want it to do some sort of calculation to. So in this case, I'm going to select the unique key because I want to count every unique record that was every unique request that was in this data set for the month of October by community board. So I'm going to press apply. And oh man, I'm going to refresh this. Okay, let's just quickly. Okay, so we get this table. This table is a little difficult to analyze because it's not in any type of order. I'm going to sort it, which is a great way to see data in either ascending or descending order. And I see Manhattan Community District 12 has the most 311 requests that occurred in October with I don't know why the Bronx is in there, with, you know, Central Park is Manhattan 64 having the least, which kind of makes sense. Okay, so this is our data, and this is known as a pivot table. And Ashley is going to actually walk you through how to create this in on your own in one moment. One thing I want to point out is when you have this filtered view of the data, you can export it. So we have oh, sorry, just messed back. Oh, it's not the right button. Okay, so we can export this data, and this will export the filters that I put in. So it's going to export the 311 request for October in Manhattan. And this is great because when you take it out of here, you won't run into some of the issues that you run into using this software. And you can play with it yourself and have the raw data and a source of truth. Okay, so if you wanted to visualize data, and I want to be aware of time and hand it over to Ashley in one moment, but if you say that you wanted to visualize the data, I'm going to just quickly show you how you do that, and I'll show you some visualizations that I made. Viewing the data in a tabular view is different than viewing it in a visualization. So even though I made filters in the view that I just was in, I'm going to go into this visualization and click Create Visualization. And the first thing you have to do is set your filters similar to how we did last time. I'm not going to go through it all right now, but I'm just going to point out you want to set your filter to narrow down this data set. And then you're going to So you might apply like 3 different filters, like for borough, for created date, and for complaint type. And then you have to choose what type of visualization do you want to use. In my case, we might want to look at a map. Maps on this website take a little while to load. So I'm glad that I'll be able to show you in a moment a map that I made before this. And then the last thing you do when you click your visualization, you have to set some dimensions over here. So with the map, it's important to know that you can't just map any data. The data set has to have location data. So basically with 311 data, each record has a location. So I'm going to quickly show you, once you set all of these, you can be taken to a map. So this is a map of helicopter noise in Manhattan in October 23. So there's, some interesting things you can see here. And another thing that I that I did was I saw that this was pretty concentrated in upper West Side sort of area. So I decided to make a chart, and lo and behold, there's a disproportionately large amount of helicopter noise complaints in Manhattan District 7 and 6, and a little bit in 8 as well. So this is a nice way for you to begin to explore the data. And I quickly want to just show you. Let me just jump to the slide that I want to get to. There are more ways that you can use data without having to know some of the technical ways of doing that. So there are a lot of tools that use open data. And we're going to put some links in the chat and share some resources after the class. But there's a lot of people that love to build tools and are really great at it. So there's ways for you to use and analyze data and gain insight without necessarily going through all these steps yourself. So some examples are all these maps that are made in New York City by New York City agencies. There's tools that are made with census data about the population. There's zoning and land use tools created by the New York City Zoning and Land Use. BetaNYC creates tools. This is a tool that shows all your political and administrative boundaries. And there's lots more. So we don't have time to go through them all, but this is just to give you an idea that there are multiple ways to use data. And so when you're thinking about how you should decide what to use, there are some pros and cons. So like we saw on the Open Data website, sometimes it can be a little bit slow. It does, but some of the pros are that you're accessing the raw data. You can really make specific queries, and you can quickly filter down. But then there's pros to using tools and exporting the data to use yourself, where you can really develop a narrative and a story that you want to tell about the data, and tools can provide that quick insight that you might be looking for. It also might allow you to explore the data in ways that you can't on the portal. So I'm going to hand it over to Ashley. Sorry for rushing a little bit in the end. We will share lots of resources with you, but we have about 10 minutes for her to show you some reports that she's going to show you ways that you can use the data when you export it.
Yes, sorry for the messy desktop here. Let's go to slideshow. Right, so we have about 5 minutes, but I will try to show some things at a high level. So once we go through all of the steps that Kate just walked us through in terms of like being able to filter a data set down, and then now you have this downloaded CSV, what can you do with it? We can use Excel to make like really great summary charts and tables to help summarize the information and make sense of this data. So I'm gonna kind of show you these 3 steps, starting with like a raw data set that was downloaded from New York City Open Data, and then like bringing it into Excel and then a couple high-level tips on like how to summarize your findings very clearly and concisely. So there are some materials that we are providing in this webinar. So one is a raw data set in a CSV format. It's filtered for 1 week of 311 data between November 5th to November 11th, just last week, for specifically requests made in Manhattan. So that goes through some of the filtering steps that Kate had just demonstrated. And then I have a sort of finished Excel worksheet, which has like various different pivot tables that I've already like sort of pre-prepared and can walk through some of that, although I think we're short on time. And then I have also prepared an example report of like a way that you might be able to summarize your findings with quick charts and like high level information on the information that you might be wanting to communicate. Okay, so when you open up a CSV file in Excel, it can be quite daunting. This is what the data looks like, but it is helpful to start with a couple research questions, like maybe in this study, like what is the current status of 311 requests? What agencies are responsible for different 311 requests? Or what requests are being made in my particular community board? Those are things that you could also filter either in the open data, New York City's open data website, or you can also filter it in Excel. So I'm gonna kind of diverge from the slides presentation now and show you what it looks like, you know, if we were to open up a file. So something that I like to do when I open up a file, I like to go into the view and just kind of freeze that top row. So what that will do is, like, when I'm scrolling down, I can still see the attribute names up at the top in the first row. The other thing that I like to do is I like to kind of just, I did a select all or Control A or Command A if you're a Mac user. And what that does is select all of the cells. You can see I'm down at like row 14,500 over here. So it's selected all of the cells. And something that I like to do is add this filter button, which will allow you to, like, you could do the filtering and sorting here. But for this exercise, I'm going to just, again, select all and then focus on inserting a pivot table. So if you go into the Insert tab here, you can see the button to insert a pivot table here or a pivot chart. So what a pivot table does is it will aggregate the data based on certain properties. So I'm gonna just click to create a pivot table and put it into a new worksheet. So once I hit OK, it will create a new sheet down here at the bottom, and I can still toggle back to the original data, which is preserved. So what I want to do is look at maybe the agency names and the status. So I can like check a box here, and what that does is it just counts all of the rows of data. So that's not very helpful just yet, but if I move it into this other space in the rows, now I get a list of all of the unique agency names that are included in this data set. Then I'm also like sort of familiar with the status property. So I want to check that as well. So I'm going to, again, move that into the rows. And now we can see that it's organized, the table is organized per department. And I can see, you know, whether a certain request has been assigned, it's in progress, open, started, or closed. And similar to how we want to maybe count the number of requests within each of these categories, we can use the unique key again. So right now, when I just clicked that, it's creating the sum of the unique keys, which is not what we want. Every unique key has this individual number, and each row of data is different from the next. So what we want to do is, instead of a sum of that information, we want to go into the field settings and look at a count of that. So we want the total number of rows that are using each of those informations. Okay, I see that we're very, very short on time. So I'm gonna skip ahead to another spreadsheet that I've already prepared and which is included in the materials. So I can just show you what it is capable of doing. So we can also make a pivot chart, and similar to that, you can see the variables that are included in the rows or the values, and to play with that to create a chart here. Here we can identify each individual agency by each agency, each particular complaint type or descriptor. And again, it kind of makes a nice summarized table with all of this information. We can also get a little bit more advanced and organize the information into like a more complex bar chart, where we're organizing the information on the x-axis by the agency name, and then each color is coordinated by the particular status, and the bar heights represent like the number of requests in each of those categories. Okay, and then from here, from Excel, what we want to do is to sort of create a report. So this document here, also included in the materials, is like a nice little summary, which takes some of the charts from that Excel pivot table and then sort of cleans it up with some magic design pixie dust and some things that I'd like to point out to help you improve some clearer communication when you need to summarize some facts and findings. It's very important to always include like a clear label or title. We know that 311 data can be very vast, but I wanted to make sure that it is clear that this is only for Manhattan and specifically requests from last week. So that should be right up at the top because that's the data that is being described here. And then some further detail is like, it's helpful to kind of put the labels directly on the data that is being described there. And sometimes it's helpful to have a percentage which summarizes like an overall takeaway versus the individual count of the number of requests that it's describing. So in this more complex chart, I've organized the information by complaint type, and I've sorted it in a descending order so that you can see the most frequent request types at the top, and the least frequent request types at the bottom. So you can see that there are a lot of requests for dirty conditions and vendor enforcements that the Department of Sanitation has received. But you can also see that many of these tickets have been marked as closed in their status. So given that it's only 1 week, I think that's like pretty great that you can see the sort of progress that many of these tickets are being addressed or currently in progress, versus some of them like graffiti are open. So maybe we can begin to think and infer about how that might be a longer process of like, addressing an issue like that. In this, short report demonstration, I've also sort of included a table, which you can see is just a printout from Excel of the breakdown of each of these request categories and the particular description of those complaints. So you can see that in some of them, they have a little bit more specificity as to what that complaint type category is describing. And then, you know, a breakdown of the status figures in this chart here.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's about it. I'm gonna stop sharing now and would love to answer any questions. I know we're a little over.
Yeah, I would just first say thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you so much, Kate, for the presentation. It is an incredible amount of information that we're able to share with everyone. I just want to remind folks, these are being recorded. So if there's anything that you want to go back to, anything that you saw and just want to catch up, please make sure to do so with the recording. I believe the link, yes, Kate shared the class materials. So that's also really helpful as well for anybody who just needs any of those additional resources. In terms of the Q&A, I'm not seeing anything. I think, Kate, I don't know if you want to answer a question from Oz about ChatGPT and a plugin.
I think Oz was providing further information to the question, so thank you. The one thing I do just want to quickly point out is that the Open Data team has a help desk where you can ask them questions about their data. So you can request data sets or report errors. Our lab, which Ashley runs, also receives requests, and it's in the beta.nyc/links. And you can use it to ask us to help with reports and analyses. And then we also have a series of programs, Open Data Week, Open Data Ambassadors, School of Data, Beta Bagels, and we hope that you will engage with us. So thank you, and thank you, Ashley, and I hope everybody has a chance to check out some of the resources that we've shared today.
I'm sure everybody will. This has been really enlightening. So thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who was able to join us for this training as well. We know we wanted to keep it to an hour during the day. So I really appreciate you joining us. And just one last plug for tomorrow afternoon is our in-person emergency preparedness training, where we're also going to be joined by the Department of Homeland Security's emergency services for the state, and they'll be the ones giving out not just a training but emergency preparedness kits. So please sign up for that. The information is in the chat. We'd love to have you join us and be able to get one of those kits. With that, just want to say thank you again, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Thank
Take care,
you.
everyone.